This video we're going to be talking about calls to action. So calls to action are generally used within a video to get the user engaged and get them to take an action, getting your audience to react to the content within the video. And the reason this works is that viewers, when they do take action, it will help them feel more invested and more a part of the video content that you're asking for. So I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of videos will have subscribe, and it actually is fairly effective to just ask for subscriptions as opposed to hoping that someone will just subscribe to your channel. So there has been, in some cases, I've seen 50 to 70% increase in the number of subscribers on a video by just having a simple call to action asking users to subscribe. Now there's a number of different ways to include this on your video. So you could do this through annotations, you could do it through graphics, images on your video, and then add in annotations later. You can also have your calls to action within the description of your video. You could have them as annotations, captions on top of the video itself. So that's for YouTube channels and YouTube videos. They've got a new one that's called cards that we're going to be getting into a little bit more in detail on later videos, as well as the annotations. But in general, there's quite a few different ways to do calls to action, as well as graphical ones within your video. So these are important when you are planning out your video to determine what course your video should be taking and where you should best place strategically these calls to action for the most effective results and gaining your audience to interact and take action on your specific calls. So popular calls to action that you might see, especially on YouTube channels, are definitely the subscribe, which is inviting viewers to subscribe to the channels. And it's also a good idea to give them a reason to subscribe. So you don't want to just maybe ask them to subscribe, you want to give them a reason to subscribe, get our latest new videos first, and there's a number of different ways to do that as well, giving the users a reason to subscribe. There's also calls to action to watch the next video, so this can be fairly effective in bringing users in to watch additional videos or related videos that you also are promoting out. So this is a great way to get users to play the next video and interact with additional content on your channel. There's also again, it's a good practice to provide a reason, not to just ask for it, to provide a reason. And the same thing with comments. It's a good idea to ask users to comment, but maybe ask them a question and guide them in a direction of what you want them to comment on. So maybe not just ask for a comment, just be more specific and ask them what they thought of a particular part in your video, particular aspect or something that was highlighted in the video, and ask them what they thought of it, and then ask them to comment below that you'd like to hear from them. And then lastly, of course, there's the share. Asking people to like and share your video, and this increases engagement and can be fairly beneficial in growing your community, as your shared content is known to be the most effective type of content out there, and it does get the most engagement back on it. So if somebody is an avid viewer or an avid subscriber within your channel, and just asking them, nudging them to share your content and to like it and share it with friends if they liked it, is a good way to grow your community. Another way to implement these types of calls to action is talk directly to your audience and just ask them and provide these different ideas for calls to action. Secondly, there's annotations, which we're going to be getting into a little bit more detail, but in general, annotations are clickable text that's overlaid on your video, and they're very versatile ways to engage with your users. As well as the in-video graphics, such as the call to action buttons that we were looking at before. So these can be fairly engaging, and you could come up with great creative ways to ask your viewers to engage with your content. As well, you can place it at the end of your video. So after the user has watched your video, then you initiate the call to action. I believe it's called an end card. So asking the user to interact at that point as well after they finish watching your video is another great way to build that engagement and do successful calls to action. An additional way is to place it within the description of the video. So after a user watches or during their watching the video, they can look down in the description and they can see what additional calls to action that they're able to perform on that video. You can be selective with where you're placing calls to action. You can use multiple calls to action, but you don't want to overwhelm your viewer and confuse them. So it is best practice to limit your calls to action, as they'll be more effective if you only have a few calls to action or one call to action, main call to action that your video is built upon. So this is something that you do have to plan within the planning stages of your video, so it is fairly important.